Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome to Northern Black Hills Rotary. We'll start with the four-way test, and then we don't have a flag. Well,
my phone with pictures. That'll do. That'll do.
So we'll start with the four-way test, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. So first, the four-way test of the things we think say or do. First,
is it true?
Second,
is it fair to all concerned?
Third,
will it build and better friendships?
And fourth,
will it be beneficial to all?
And now we'll pretend there's a flag over here, like the Netherlands, unless we get one.
We're getting one here.
I'm trying.
I take
Okay, where do you want it?
Right there. You're the winner. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I guess I'll start with just a couple things just to let everybody know what's coming up. So next Wednesday, our district governor, John Schneider, will be here to meet with us. The Wednesday following that, Greg Hollabaugh will be here to speak. And then following that, Bill Tobin from Shelterbox. Oh, and does anybody here not know what Shelterbox is? Yeah. Dana, do you want to talk about that?
Shelterbox started off as a small club project, I think in Wales or southwestern England, about this Rotary Club was trying to figure out how we could do better sheltering of people after a disaster of some kind. And this one guy said, he'd been in the Navy, he said, I could figure out a better solution to what's going on for whatever disaster it was. And so I said, okay, well, why don't you come up with something? And so Shelterbox has evolved into a 100-pound container that's almost indestructible, containing a tent that will house up to 10 people, cooking implements that are appropriate for the area with and ideal and for the fuel that's available in that area. Mosquito nets if it's appropriate, blankets if it's appropriate. Just what a family would need to basically just eke out an existence after a disaster, but to have some shelter. And it's spun off from Rotary to become its own charity. They have logistics places in 3 different parts of the world, and these things can be mobilized out of any of these 3 places in the world. They can be dropped by helicopter. These boxes can be trucked in on mules. It's just amazing. The Shelterbox volunteers go to set up literally tent cities, and they know how to set these things up. They know how to set up streets and for people to get their mail. And it's absolutely amazing. It's a logistical miracle, and it's a huge improvement on how disasters were dealt with in the past. That's it. Started Rotary. That's it.
So who's the guy?
Bill Tobin.
And what does he do?
I don't know his connection with Shelterbox.
I don't know, but I asked the district a couple of years ago, like, if you ever have a Shelterbox record, we send it out to us. It's so cool, and we need to know about it. So
when we were in the Laramie Rotary Club, we had a Shelterbox rep, and she had a box. And so we would take it to different events, and there was like a 4th of July event where people had all kinds of booths and things in the park, and she would set it out so you could see actual and what the equipment was. So it was really pretty cool. Yeah. So that's what's coming up. Right after this meeting, I'm going to fold out of here right at 1 and go to the barn at Aspen Acres. Yeah. The barn at Aspen Acres, and we might have a setup and take down there around October 13th, 15th, somewhere in there. So we're going to look and see what we can do for them as far as booths and stuff. So it doesn't sound like a big setup, but it sounds like something pretty good. So we'll see if we can get that done. And then I'll communicate that out to everybody when it's on a sharing profit deal, so we can sign up for that. And then I just saw a couple of invites from Sherry for a setup and takedown. I think it's here. So keep an eye out for that email. If you can join us, that would be great. That's it for me. Does anybody else have? Daryl, do you have anything?
Just a quick announcement here. This is an economic seminar that Kelly and I work for is putting on. And they're having an economist come in to speak. And he's a pretty big deal. His name is Dr. Chris Kuhl, Kuehl. And he has as many insignias after your name as you can get. But he is currently, his forte is economic forecast. And he's working for the state of Kentucky, Missouri, Tennessee, Oklahoma, North Dakota. He's currently forecasting for different countries, Hungary, Russia, Astoria, Singapore, and Taiwan. This is going to be on Wednesday, October the 12th. It's a free event, and they'll even provide breakfast. But if you're concerned about the current state of economy, I know every time the stock market takes a bad day,
Every day.
my retirement here. So maybe you can shed some light. Anyway, if you're interested in that, Kelly, I know.
Yeah, so you should have received an email in Rapid City. You should have received an email from me this morning with this flyer that he has in hand. If you just respond to that email to me by tomorrow at 11 a.m. with your name and mailing address, we'll get you on the list because they're going to mail out invitations. So if you didn't get one, let me know.
Free breakfast. Free breakfast and note your future. There you go.
Yeah.
You should help the United States.
If you just
Kelly,
And then real quick, Beautify Spearfish has another trash pickup next Wednesday. I have a conference to be at, so Dana's going to take points on that. If anybody would love to go help her and get photos and things like that, it would be fantastic. It's going to be at the high school at 5:45 p.m. Northern Hills Girl Scouts are going to come. They're going to clean up the high school parking lot, the skate park, and along Hillsville Road. Yeah. And then Fancy Coffee Truck is going to be there. We picked up, and I said, well, there's only a couple of us that actually are on the board. We work with organizations. If you're still willing to do that, here's our good organization to give back to, since we want to say yay for the kids to come out and help. So, yeah,
for sure. Thank you.
I help if you want to. Oh, great, thank you.
I'm not 100% sure if there's anybody who didn't sign this card last week. It looks like most of you were here last week, but if you weren't, I'm going to pass it around. It is a 100th birthday card for Rapid City Rotary. And Brian and I are going down, I think it's 29th, something like that, in Rapid City. And are you going to? Yeah, so a few of us are going. I think the deadline to sign up is today. If you're interested, you can go to the District 5610 website and get the options to sign up online. And anyways, if anyone wasn't here, just pass that around. That Shauna, she wasn't here last week. Ellen, were you here?
There's also a Facebook event for this on our Facebook page that has the link that you can sign up. Well,
Oh, Jim, were you here last week?
No, I'm a past officer in that.
Oh, okay, and one more. Tony, would you like to introduce your
Yes. I'm happy to introduce my friend Marina. She works at initially as with clients in Round City, and then Colonel Stacy Goodman to meet us.
you can draw your own and you get to win.
So like $55 or something?
$56, yeah.
$56.
Okay, 54.
Who has that? Because I dumped that out of there. And I should leave it out. You are 54.
Oh.
It's very good.
Yeah, but one more, yeah.
Yeah, let me just go ahead and take the yellow bead out of here so we can. It's in there. See if you can draw the yellow bead. Otherwise, you're going to get $3 for your good. So if you don't get it, then draw another blue. Okay. Let Tom draw one more.
This is movie prize.
Movie prize is $3.
I need you to leave so I can. Throw back in. Those were rules.
Okay, and the next thing we do is called Happy Boxes. So if you'd like, you can take out $1, put it in the jar, and just say something you're happy about, or something you've done recently that was fun or interesting, whatever you want to say. So also, I'm just happy to be here.
I am unable to give a happy $1 for Blackville State beating my shadow. So I will give a sportsmanship.
I'm happy for having guests.
I'm happy because yesterday I lost my wallet in Walmart. Thank God that they have a good camera system, because they did find it for me, and I had only $300 in there from my trip I just got back in cash. So I it just fell out of my pocket, and somebody picked it up and gave it to the store associate, and then they gave it to our managers. So I'm $300 ahead yesterday.
Well, I'm happy to be visiting my family in Wisconsin. I'm happy that Prairie Berry reached out to Hobo's Healing Heart and wants to collaborate with us for a pet Halloween costume contest this year, and then to add another 0.5K down at their location. So we're going to pick up one in Rapid City, and we'll have a trifecta.
Well, this is the last day of summer, and I'm happy that we've had such a good summer.
I'm putting all my winnings in there plus, and I'm happy that I have to go down to accept awards.
Oh, yes. I'm happy for the rain today, and that it's the first day of fall.
I'm going to add something.
That's why it's having some beautiful weather we've been having.
I'm not add something. I'm going to use this. Because I meant to also tell you, I'm also happy that Junix had a Hobo's Healing Heart over this weekend, and we raised $1,100. Low Park Car Show. Thank you. I need to put that all in one. I need to lay down.
All right. If there's not anything else, I'll introduce our speaker. Okay. So our speaker today is Colonel Stacy Goodman. There's so much I could say about Colonel Goodman, but I just gleaned a few things, and I'm going to focus on education. And there's plenty to talk about there, so, and then you can add anything else that you like. But Colonel Goodman is originally from the Black Hills, joined the Army National Guard at age 17, and has spent over 28 years in the Army, serving in all three components: Army National Guard and Army Reserve. She's got a bachelor's degree in marketing from Black Hills State University using the GI Bill. Has a master's degree in management with specialization in leadership and organizational effectiveness from Troy University. Has a master's degree in legislative affairs from the George Washington University, a master's degree in strategic studies at the U.S. Army War College, and a PhD from Capella University. And many more credentials. So thank you so much for being with us.
I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you, Shauna, for asking me. When Shauna asked me a couple months ago if I would come talk, I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know if these people would be interested in anything I have to say. So as your leader said there, I've been to school a bunch. I got my master's degree from George Washington as part of an Army Congressional Fellowship program, where I worked in the personal office of U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders. for a year as a apolitical appointee from Department of Defense. And one of my fellows worked for Ted Cruz. And so in 2015, so it was like really kind of a crazy time in there. So I could go on and on about that all day, but I'm currently assigned to the 76 Operational Response Command in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I'm the G1 there. So I'm the personnel officer. We have about 7,000 soldiers in the 76 Operational Response Command from Puerto Rico to California, south, north, and south. So they're a fun bunch. Our focus is homeland response. So protecting the homeland or reacting to an event in the homeland. So we train very seriously and very hard for something hopefully we never have to do, holy moly. So I'm getting ready to transition from that job and go to Minneapolis and take command of the 88th Mission Command and Support Group in Fort Snelling, Minnesota in November. So I'm excited because when you're on the staff, like you're one of many colonels, right? And so like it's a very collaborative thing. I call it Fight Club. We get together, all the colonels get together and they talk to me and they have ideas, I have ideas. But when you're the commander, your idea is number one. So I'm looking forward to that. But anyways, so when Shauna came asked me to talk to you guys, I thought, oh man, she said, just tell some funny stories. And I thought, I don't know if that's gonna work, but I have some funny stories. I have some ideas. In my civilian life, I teach graduate school at Grand Canyon University and at Colorado State University. So I teach completely remotely. So I split my time here between here in Spearfish and where my husband grew up in Mesa, Arizona. He's a retired Army guy, and this enables my crazy lifestyle. I just flew in from Salt Lake City a couple of days ago, and I'm headed out next week after Swarm Days to do something. So I don't know where.
She's our 2022.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah. So come out to the parade. I bought like, I don't know, a couple thousand Tootsie Rolls and some green Army men and green Army ladies. So the South Dakota National Guard is going to drive me through the parade in some vehicles that I thought we were getting something. I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to show up at the President's Circle on Saturday morning. I'm going to get in it and you'll get candy. That's how it's going to work. So I'm really, really humbled by that too. I can't believe I get to be on a banner on St. Joe for a year. So who knew? So I don't know. It's a weird, crazy time. So anywho, I thought I'd share some stories with you guys today, like Shauna advised me here. So this is, there we go. So that's me, Stacy Goodman, and my friend Gun Guy, who's an Afghani dude that I met when I was in Afghanistan in 2009, and my boss, Colonel Pratt. I don't know if you can kind of see in the corner, Colonel Pratt's missing a bunch of fingers. So it's a story for another day, but like he blew a bunch of his fingers off and he would always talk about this. I'm like, he was an engineer, I'm an engineer. He was an engineer and apparently he held on to the blasting caps too long. Bummer, it happens. But he always felt, somebody sewed his gloves up for him. So he always had these funny gloves and it was funny. But he introduced me to my friend Gun Guy, and Gun Guy, I don't know, around 19, 20 years old in this picture. This is 2009. And he was born just kind of as the Russians were leaving Afghanistan, and the Taliban came in and they didn't let people have birthdays. The Taliban said no freaking birthdays, right? So Gun Guy really, nobody in Afghanistan under about, I don't know, 60, which there weren't very many people that lived to be 60 years old there, knew really how old they were because the Taliban said no birthdays. So when we got rid of the Taliban for a while there in 2001, all the little governments in cities, municipalities hired a guy at their city hall, and you would go there and he would look at you and he would tell you how old you were. and so your birthday was January 1st minus however many years that dude said you were old. So Gun Guy thought he was about 19 years old in this picture. So I thought, man, what an interesting kind of perspective thing, right? So Gun Guy, I called him Gun Guy. His name was Omid, and he just like would go get you stuff. Like we're in a market right there in my compound in Kabul. And so if you needed like a hair dryer or spray paint or just like really random stuff, like he was the Artful Dodger, he would go get you stuff. And so when he was about 10 years old was about the time we showed up in Afghanistan. And so he, I don't know, I guess we'll call it 10. Anyways, he learned, he would go, the soldiers could go down to this place called Chicken Street. He would sit on top of your vehicle. And if anybody came to mess with your vehicle while you were shopping or eating, he would call you on the radio. And so he could speak Dari, Pashto, German, English, French. And when I was there, he was learning Dutch because we had the Dutch allies were in Afghanistan at the time. But he couldn't read or write. in any language. So I always thought that was kind of a funny thing. I'm like, no, because we never went to school. And so kind of an interesting, just a very interesting thing. So I'll tell you some things about Gun Guy. So, you know, I don't know, I love to talk and I'm not a shy character. And Gun Guy was very curious about American culture. And he wanted to learn all about the American holidays. So I said, man, I'm taking that on, Gun Guy. You want to learn about American holidays? I know all about them. I've been American my whole life. I've celebrated all. So we had a fun time. We talked about Christmas one time, and I'll save that for another day because it got real weird. So then, so St. Patrick's Day came up, and my boss, the Fulbright colonel that I worked for, he was something or another, and he loved St. Patrick's Day. So Gun Guy says, hey, Goodman, you got to tell me about this St. Patrick's Day. And I said, well, Gun Guy, it is a great American holiday. We all pretend we're Irish. We dye our water green, our beer green, and we drink beer and pretend we're Irish. And if you're not wearing green, people pinch you. And he was like, wow, that's freedom, I guess, right? And he's like, you know, yeah, pretty much. And so St. Patrick's Day came, we came on our little compound and whatever. And my boss was wearing Colonel whatever there was wearing a leprechaun hat and a shirt that said the chief pincher. And I said, man, it says the chief pincher, like he'll pinch you if you're not wearing green. And he's like, I thought you made that up. I'm like, no, this is a real holiday in America. So I don't know how that worked out for him, but that's what I told him. So we had contracted Afghani security on my compound. So they were all Afghan nationals, you know, the people that we tried to get out at a later time worked on my compound. And if you didn't speak English, we paid, and you wanted to carry a gun and defend Americans while we were doing other stuff, we paid you $100 a month. And if you could pass the English test, we paid you $300 a month. So there was a huge incentive to learn to speak some English, right? And so all these gate guard guys were always trying out their English on me. And so it was very fun. So Gun Guy came to see me one night. I went out to our gate to talk to him. He probably bought me, this pendant that I'm wearing is a piece of morganite that I said, hey, Gun Guy, I need you to give me like a 6-carat emerald cut piece of morganite. So he came back with that and I bought it from him. So anyways, probably one of those type of things. He bought me jewelry, whatever you wanted. So he comes out there and one of the gate guards was trying to learn English. And so he says to me, hey, Goodman, you know, the security guard, he wants to know why you're a woman and you have a man name. Right? I was like, oh, geez, I don't even, like, I did so bad with St. Patrick's Day. What do I say here? So Gun Guy goes, look, I know. I said, okay, give it a try. And he goes, so he says to the dude in English, he says, look, Goodman is the name of her husband and he loves her very much. And so he puts his name on her because she is his property. And I was like, well, I mean, that's good. I mean, I like it. Okay. I said, that's probably about it. Yeah. And he goes, so the guy goes, so you can't be a good woman. And he's like, no, that's the name of her husband. And that's how people know that's his property. And I was like, all right, we're going to leave that alone for another day. Anyway, so I just kind of share all those things with you, you know, about leadership perspective and metacognition, thinking about thinking and thinking about how you frame your own thoughts and what shapes your world, right? So here's what we're going to talk about today a little bit, very, very quickly, right? So normally this is a little pitch that I give my officers, and so they have to like it. You guys can form your own opinion. So I want to talk a little bit about resilience is self-leadership. We're going to talk about self-leadership. Someone's always watching you on your behavior, rethinking balance, knowing your fatal flaws, thinking about how to deliver bad news to people, learn a book, and get better or die trying. So that's my topic areas for today. So let's get going, right? So self-leadership, right? So I really like this Venn diagram about self-leadership. So really the ability, self-leadership is essentially awareness and tolerance of the things that you aren't so good at, kind of trying to compensate for those things and being in control of yourself, right? Being present in the moment, acting appropriately, not always easy, and choosing, make good choices, right? So I had a boss that his wife, every time we left the place, she would always say, make good choices. And there was a reason for that because he sucked at it. So, I just tell you all that to think about, you know, if you're the first step in really any leadership is being able to lead yourself, see yourself, and probably try and be your best self as often as you can. And when you're not your best self, kind of own up to it. So let's keep talking about that. There we go. So, because someone's always watching us, right? And I like the dude is like, I'm watching you, right? Like watching you. And I think about this often because I think we're all leaders of somebody, leaders of our family, leaders in our community, leaders at our workplace, you know, and if people followed your example all the time, would you be super happy with what they're doing? You know, the crazy stuff you say, the weird things you do, whatever. And so I always try and keep that in the front of my brain. Like when I'm like at a stoplight and somebody runs it, like I'm like, should I honk the horn and give them the bird? No, like you should be like better person than that. Unless you're in DC, then you do it all the time. That's how otherwise somebody's going to kill you, run over. So anyways, and of course in my business, you know, the enemy's always listening to us. We, you know, some of the things we don't do or do are extremely telling to people that intend to do us harm. So rethinking balance. And I know every person I talk to lately is like, I got to maintain my work-life balance and I got to do this. Like, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. Because if you have good balance, that means nothing's moving, like nothing's happening to you. Your scale is stagnant, right? And so everything deserves your attention, right? So the sticky note lady's kind of my favorite person here. And so at some point, you know, the Army always talks to us about the circles, right? The Army Reserve particularly, right? You have your family and your civilian career and your military career. And at some point, one of those things is going to demand a lot more attention than the others. And you got to pay attention to that thing. But you can't exclusively pay attention to that thing and neglect the other two. And that the big circle thing can't always be the big circle thing. So I think you need to really take some time every once in a while to say, am I paying too much attention to this? Am I really helping or hurting the problem by spending more time on this? And what am I neglecting by paying such attention to this thing that's whatever driving me crazy? And I've learned as an organizational leader, you know, when you got to do personnel stuff for 7,000 people. Like obviously I get kind of involved in some of these people's special problems sometimes, but sometimes if you just ignore it for a while, it will go away, right? Like it's not even, oh, Colonel Goodman, we fixed that. I'm like, well, that was a good deal. I'm glad for that. I'm so super happy. But anyway, so, and I like this little Zen lady over here too. And I think so many people let their day run them instead of running their day. And so you really, really, really have to set aside time every day. To do things that need to be done for you. Pay your cable bill, pick up your dry cleaning, you know, maybe schedule a hair appointment, something like that, you know, whatever. And try and set a schedule. I think this is, after COVID, probably one of the hardest things that we have now, right? We're trying to figure out, oh, is it okay to start my work at 7 o'clock in the morning, or can I wait till 9, or should I stop working at 7 o'clock at night? But trying to set a schedule. And I don't know, don't tell my husband I said this, but I tell him all the time, like, we gotta go to bed at a reasonable time. Like so schedule is all the time, right? So it's not just like your work day, it's all the time. So, and I think number 5 is mine. I'm a paper sticky note person or whatever, my desk. I just gotta throw some stuff away. Or people, I guess because I'm an older person, my soldiers love to print stuff for me. Here, Colonel Goodman, I thought you would want to read this in hard copy. I'm like, oh, thank you. You know, like if we didn't have this in the Civil War, thanks. And anyway, soldiers. So just own your schedule. And don't let it run you, you know, don't let people do drive-bys in your office if you can avoid it. Try and just get them under control, right? So fatal flaws. And I think this is huge to me. So I think so many people, so like Colonel whatever there in Afghanistan, he was a real maniac and had a lot of fatal flaws. He was super paranoid. And sometimes so I have to do these overnight security rotations with our contracted gate guards, which again, a story for another day, but he would sometimes like sneak up behind you when you were like patrolling around the base at night. And dude, I was like, I probably should have shot you 15 times already, right? But he thought that was like one of his best leadership things. And I don't know, paranoia, I think, and delusion. And then he never let anybody know where he stayed on the compound. So I'm like, well, if you wake up dead, that's your own problem. So anywho, I think, you know, I meet a lot of, you know, spiteful people who can't let stuff go. And so everyone has probably quite a few of these, and some of them are more prevalent than others. Some of them are easier to control than others. And sometimes you probably don't even know you have them. So you should ask some people every once in a while, like, what makes you hate me? You know, what do I suck at? Like, and you know, they'll tell you. I mean, I get told all the time things that I'm like, you know, Carl Goodman, what you're not good at. I'm like, I'd love to hear about it. So it's good stuff. So anyway, fatal flaws. I think it's very important to think about those. And then my favorite guy, Colin Powell here. And I think figuring out how to couch bad news is probably one of your best skills as a team member, as a leader, just as a member of your family sometimes. And I suck at it. That's probably one of my fatal flaws. You know, my husband always tells me, you know, Stacy, if you could just not say that like that would be really good. I'm like, well, they suck. They just needed to hear it real quick. And so, and also I think just kind of don't go easy on your people all the time. Like sometimes you got to be like, this is really super disappointing. You should go to lunch before I kick you out of my office. You know, like we're done here. And then just, it's fine. Like you don't do it again. Everything's cool. Go ahead, you know, get mad, get over it, say what's happening. And everybody needs to kind of be out there and move on it. Learning how to do it tactfully. That's my next slideshow some other day when I get on that track. So it's a tricky time, right? So learn a book. So this is kind of like get smart, you know, right? So good old Mad Dog Mattis there, the former SecDef, his big thing was rest, right? So read, exercise, sleep, and think. You've got to make time for those things every day. And he's like a ferocious reader. Apparently his personal library collection is in the thousands of books. So, I mean, and that's how you get good at your craft. That's how you get smarter at what you're doing. And the Army's been telling me the math problem there is what I should do. And I don't know, I'm not subscribed to this yet. So 7, 10, 5, and 2, right? So sleep for 7 hours every night, work for 10. I think that includes working out because you got to work out in Army. So because I'm like 10 hours a lot of work. Anyways, and then 5 hours of family time and socializing or what have you. And then 2 hours of like personal time every day. So I mean, it could work for you. That's what they're telling me to do. So I'm trying it. And I think the last point on this slide is super important, right? We live in a very divided world, and most of the time I think we're just not as far apart as we'd like to think we are. And so many people can't form a decent argument and defend it. Something, I think that's great, but like be cool about it, right? Just, hey, this is what I think, and here's why I think that, instead of you're dumb for not thinking like me, etc. And I think the point above it, I think, is one of the things I try and practice all the time. So when I worked in Bernie Sanders' office, they delivered every paper made in Vermont every day to my desk, along with Politico and Washington Post and New York Times, various types, and sometimes more depending on what was going on, what appointments we were taking. So things, and so if you're like, you know, a Fox News watcher, you should probably turn on CNN every once in a while, and vice versa. Like I love the Today Show, so sometimes I watch Good Morning America, and then I'm like, I love the Today Show. So I just think it's really important to kind of venture outside. I think I'm very afraid of, from an intellectual standpoint, all of these algorithms that tell us things that we might like next. When you turn on YouTube and it takes you to something that you might like next, I'm like, well, how do you ever know things you might like that you never knew you liked? You know, so I'm very fearful for the future there with the things that we can't control because it's feeding us things. Okay, and it's feeding us things that we don't know what they are. And so I challenge you to like put in a weird search term sometime in YouTube and watch that Hulu thing, and you're like, I don't think I'd like that. So, you know? So get better or die trying, right? So I think every day you have to commit to yourself to be better and to try new things and to be in control of your life and just commit to being a good citizen, a good family member, a good you know, co-worker, a good whatever it is, right? So these are all kind of, and I think part of that is getting out and seeing people, talking to people, understanding what's happening to them. That show Undercover Boss always cracks me up. I'm like, really? You had no idea this nice lady with 5 kids works for minimum wage in your warehouse? Yes, she did. So you just like her now. That's the whole difference, right? So anyway, so, and then, you know, find your leadership style and lead yourself. And so that's kind of what I got for you today. So let's see. So I know what you're all thinking right now. What happened to Gun Guy? Right. So the Gun Guy, passport, he wanted my husband and I to take him back to America. And at the time we were in Hawaii, and I was like, look, first of all, I can't afford your dental work. That's probably not going to happen anytime soon. And secondly, like we had to, you know, sponsor a visa for him and et cetera. And he was a smart dude, clearly. I said, look, you got to stay here and make Afghanistan better, man. Like, I'm leaving you here. Sorry about that. And so I saw he kept finding me on Facebook all the time and whatever. And I'm like, oh, Gun Guy, whatever. So, you know, last year we pulled out of Afghanistan. He called me on Facebook Messenger and I thought, oh man, how do we get this guy out of Afghanistan? He's like, hey, Goodman, how you doing? And I said, I'm doing good, Gun Guy. Where are you? He goes, I'm in LA. I got married to a soldier. I have 2 kids and I work for a security company. Good for you, Gun Guy. Good for you.